They laughed, not politely, not kindly. They mocked me. A chef? You? They snorted. I was the odd one out, the girl from nowhere, in a room full of big names and big egos. But then I brought out my dish, and the richest man in the room started to cry. If you've ever been doubted, laughed at, or told you're not good enough, this story is for you. Watch till the end. I promise, it might just change how you see yourself. I grew up in a town so small you could drive through it in 5 minutes and still have time to wave at everyone on the way out. We didn't have much, just me and my mom, trying to make the best of what we had. She worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, just to keep the lights on. But somehow, our little kitchen always felt like the warmest place in the world. It wasn't fancy, peeling wallpaper, secondhand pots, a stove that made strange noises, but it was ours, and it was where I first fell in love with food. It wasn't just about eating, it was about creating something from nothing. I'd stand on a stool next to my grandma, flour on my cheeks, pretending I knew what I was doing while she moved around with this beautiful rhythm, never needing a recipe, always tasting as she went. She didn't measure with cups. She measured with memory, with instinct, and I wanted to be just like her. I still remember the way she'd say, "Real cooking comes from feeling, not from books." That stuck with me more than anything else. When I told people I wanted to be a chef, they smiled at first. But it didn't take long before the smiles faded into smirks. Teachers pulled me aside and told me I should aim higher. Friends joked that I'd end up flipping burgers forever. I laughed with them sometimes, just to hide how much it hurt. But deep down, I knew this wasn't some silly hobby. This was who I was. I applied to culinary schools, dozens, and I got rejection after rejection. Some didn't even send a proper letter. One just said, "Not competitive enough." That one stung, but I couldn't let it stop me. So I did the only thing I could. I got to work. Any kitchen that would take me, I said yes. Dishwashing, prepping vegetables, scrubbing grease off the walls. I did it all. I watched. I listened. I learned. I burned dishes. I ruined more than I got right in the beginning. I cut my fingers so many times, I stopped counting. There were nights I cried in the walk-in freezer just to cool my face down before going back out. But I never stopped showing up. I never stopped trying. Because somewhere in that chaos, I believed if I kept going one day, I'd get my shot. I was working at this tiny local restaurant. Nothing glamorous. The kind of place where the ceiling leaks when it rains, and the staff jokes about whether payday will come on time. But I didn't care. It was a kitchen, and I was finally on the line, cooking real food. I poured everything I had into each plate. No shortcuts, no faking it. Just me, my hands, and the fire. One night, I made this dish, simple, soulful, something I grew up eating but added my own twist to. I didn't even think twice. It was just dinner service, like any other. But apparently, someone important was sitting in the corner booth. I didn't know until the manager pulled me aside afterward, wide-eyed, like he'd seen a ghost. "Do you know who that was?" he asked. I didn't. Turns out it was someone who worked in elite private dining circles, a talent scout of sorts for exclusive culinary events. He wanted to talk to me. At first, I thought it was a joke. I kept looking over my shoulder like maybe he meant to talk to someone else, but he was serious. He told me he'd been to the best restaurants in the world, tasted food from Michelin-starred chefs, and my dish that night, it had something different, he said. It had heart. He invited me to cook at a private event, just one night, one shot. I'd be cooking for billionaires, celebrities, powerful people who could change your whole life with one conversation. I said yes before I even fully understood what I was saying yes to. I was terrified. I had no title, no credentials, just my story and my food. and for the first time, it felt like maybe, just maybe, that might be enough. The night of the event, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I showed up early, way too early, wearing my own black chef coat, clean, but definitely not designer. Everyone else looked like they'd walked out of a food magazine. Immaculate uniforms, embroidered names, knives that cost more than my rent. I tried to stay invisible, quietly taking in the energy of the room, but I could feel the stares before anyone said a word. One of the sous chefs walked past me, did a double take, and said, "You lost, sweetheart. The service staff's down the hall." I told him I was one of the chefs. He raised his brows and laughed. Not mean, just dismissive, like I wasn't even worth being rude to. Another chef overheard and smirked. "Let me guess, fusion street food?" More laughter. No one asked my name. No one cared where I came from. I was just the girl with no credentials, no famous mentor, no fancy accent. I could feel their doubt pressing in on me, thicker than the steam rising from the stoves. Part of me wanted to run, just slip out the back and pretend this never happened. But I kept hearing my grandma's voice in my head. Let your food speak. We were told to prepare one signature dish each, one chance to make an impression. The others began prepping with their teams, precision plating, sous vide machines humming, ingredients I couldn't even pronounce. I stood at my tiny assigned counter with my basic setup and ingredients I brought from home. My heart was pounding, but my hands found their rhythm. I kept my head down, not out of shame, but focus. Every move I made, every cut, every stir, it all came from something deeper than technique. It came from memory, from love, from years of being told I couldn't. The room buzzed with confidence, with ego, with expectation. And there I was, the outsider. They laughed when I said I was a chef, but I wasn't there to impress them. I was there to serve a dish with soul, one that could silence a room, not with flash, but with feeling. I stared at my ingredients like they were old friends, because, in a way, they were. Every single one had a story. The slow-cooked tomatoes reminded me of summer mornings with my grandmother when we'd peel them barefoot in the garden. The spices were from a tiny store back home where the owner always gave me a little extra for luck. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, but each piece of that dish carried a memory, a part of me. While the others measured with timers and thermometers, I cooked from instinct. I didn't have a brigade of assistants or a high-end machine humming on the counter. Just my pan, my heart, and the clock ticking louder by the minute. Around me, the room was full of chefs working like scientists, precise, flawless, cold. They had strategies. I had stories. And the more I cooked, the more I realized maybe that was my edge. I wasn't trying to compete anymore. I just wanted to make something real. The dish I decided to make was one I'd been perfecting for years. It didn't look like much, just a small bowl, warm and rustic. But it was layered, complex in a way that couldn't be seen, only tasted. I added a final touch, something no recipe ever taught me. A pinch of spice my grandmother used to call the memory dust. She said it woke up the feelings in the food. I don't know if that's true, but it always felt like magic when she added it. So I did the same, for her, for me. As I plated the dish, I caught a few sideways glances. One chef actually chuckled, like he couldn't believe I was serving that. I didn't respond. I couldn't afford to. My whole body was buzzing, half fear, half adrenaline. The only thing keeping me grounded was the smell of my food, the sound of the sauce simmering, the rhythm of my own breath. I thought about how far I'd come, from greasy kitchens where no one remembered my name, to this moment, standing in a kitchen full of talent, privilege, and polish. I had no titles, no resume that sparkled, but what I did have couldn't be taught. I had scars on my hands. I had stories woven into every bite. And I had a quiet fire that had never gone out, no matter how many people tried to smother it. So I took a breath, I wiped my hands, and I stepped forward to present my dish. I didn't need it to be perfect. I just needed it to be mine. When the dishes were presented, it was like watching a runway show. The other chefs served elaborate plates, colors bursting, stacked high, drizzled with sauces in perfect symmetry. Some looked like they belonged in art museums rather than on a dinner table. Cameras flashed. Waiters moved like dancers. Compliments floated through the air like perfume. And then there was mine, simple, modest, a single bowl with soft steam rising gently from the top. No edible gold, no foams, just a dish filled with quiet care. The waiter who carried it looked a little confused, as if wondering why it didn't look like the others. I watched from a distance, heart pounding, fingers twitching, trying not to doubt everything I'd done. One by one, the guests were served. Among them was the man I'd been told about, the billionaire. I didn't know his story, just his status, but there was something about him that made everyone else watch him before reacting themselves. His opinion weighed more than any Michelin star that night. I held my breath as he lifted the spoon. I told myself not to care, told myself, you already won, you showed up. But I cared, of course I did. He took a bite, and then he paused. His spoon hovered midair. He looked down into the bowl like it had whispered something to him. Then, slowly, he placed the spoon down. His eyes started to glisten, not dramatic, not exaggerated, just quietly overwhelmed. He closed his eyes, pressed a hand to his chest, and said something I'll never forget. This tastes like my mother's cooking. I haven't felt this in decades. The entire room went still. No more jokes, no more laughter, just silence, the kind that falls when something real has entered the room. Then, softly, the billionaire looked around and asked, "Who made this?" I stepped forward. My legs felt like jelly, but I held my head high. For once, I didn't shrink. He walked over, eyes still watery, and said, "You didn't just cook food tonight. You brought me back to a place I thought I'd lost." The applause started slow, then grew. The chefs who mocked me earlier weren't laughing now. One even nodded with quiet respect. The head chef who'd rolled his eyes at me earlier, he asked if I would teach him the recipe. But I didn't say much, because at that moment, I wasn't thinking about the applause or the recognition. I was thinking about my grandma's kitchen and how proud she would have been to know her recipe made a billionaire cry. Not because it was fancy, but because it was honest, because it was made with love. And that, I realized, is the ingredient most people forget. After the dinner ended, everything felt like a blur. People came up to me with business cards, invitations, and compliments that didn't sound forced anymore. One woman offered me a spot on a culinary show. Another wanted to feature me in a magazine. Someone else whispered about a restaurant partnership in Paris. It was overwhelming. The same people who barely looked at me a few hours earlier were now asking for my number, my ideas, my time. But I wasn't thinking about any of that. What I remember most is walking out the back door of the venue, still wearing my stained apron, standing under the night sky, and just breathing. For the first time in years, I felt seen. Not because of a title or a resume or someone else's approval, but because I stayed true to myself. I thought about all the times I almost quit, the nights scrubbing dishes until my back ached, the rejection letters, the shifts where no one knew my name, the tears I hid in the walk-in freezer. And now, here I was, the girl they once laughed at, making dishes that touched hearts, not because they were complicated, but because they were real. I didn't become a chef in that moment. I had been one all along. I just finally let the world see it. That night didn't magically fix everything. I still had a long way to go. But something changed inside me. I stopped asking for permission. I stopped measuring myself against other people's expectations. I learned that success isn't loud. Sometimes it looks like a quiet bowl of food that makes someone cry because it reminds them of home. A few weeks later, I opened a small kitchen space of my own. Nothing grand, just enough to cook and serve the food I loved, the way I wanted to. And people came, not for trends, not for Instagram pictures. They came because they could taste the story in every bite. Looking back now, I don't regret the struggle. I don't regret the failures, the embarrassment, or the hard lessons, because every single one of those moments led me here. They shaped my flavor. They gave my food a soul. So, yeah, they laughed when I said I was a chef, but they're not laughing anymore. And to anyone out there with a dream they've been told is too small, too unrealistic, or not good enough, don't listen. Keep going. Keep creating. Let your passion speak louder than their doubt, because one day your story will speak for itself. And trust me, someone out there is waiting to taste it. You don't need approval to chase your dream. You just need belief and a little fire in your soul. If you felt this story, share it with someone who needs a reminder. Your story matters. Your passion matters. And one day, they'll stop laughing too.